late or not at all. Got called into something, so we'll see. Good afternoon. How we doing, guys?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing good. Can't complain. Back school started for both boys. So my one up in college and the younger one's back at school this week, and everything else is pretty good. How about you guys? Good.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that school's starting back up. Yeah, we're doing good. I'm thankfully I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. All right, welcome. We are the Reboot. We are every Wednesday, 1:30 Eastern time, and then whatever time zone David Luft is in, I forget. He's 2 hours behind us, I think. Central.
Oh, I'm always behind you guys.
Exactly.
I'll never catch up. We're in Mountain Time, so I'm above you.
There you go. I am Brian Bratcher with B&L PC Solutions in Long Island, New York, and I'm joined by this guy.
I am Dave Groot with WinStar Technologies in Culpeper, Virginia.
And David Luft with LDD Consulting in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the chili capital of the world.
Wow. You mean like cold or chili, like chili peppers?
Like chili peppers.
See, that's the Culpeper logo is a chili pepper. Culpeper, Virginia.
Right.
Interesting stuff. All right, guys. So today we're going to talk about the Federal Trade Commission's, the FTC Safeguard Rules, and the amendments to this rule that was put into. So the Safeguards Rule took effect in 2003, and after some changes in technology and public commentary, they amended this rule set in 2021. Just to make sure that these rules kept pace with the current technology. So they preserved the flexibility of the original rule, and the revised rule now provides more concrete guidance for business. And I think we're for our purposes, we work with car dealerships, and there's every car dealership, used, new, big, small, across the country, needs to follow these the amendments to these elements, and it's pretty in depth on what these dealerships and need to do.
It's pretty in depth, but I think it's pretty much in line with a lot of the other compliance kind of things, right?
100%. There's nothing out here that anyone would say, why do we have to do this? Or I knew nothing about this. And it's kind of stuff
like,
that.
What is that? Or what do you mean we're going to do this?
Yeah. There's going to be, I mean, there's things that and it's not cheap. There's some consulting that has to be done depending on how the infrastructure is set up. I mean, I've been talking to some high level dealerships that know nothing about this. And
it's amazing
as this week. Yeah. It really is. And then there's people that say, "Oh, we have it covered. We're doing this, this, and this." And I said, "You're not even touching the subject. You're so far removed from it." And I think it's important to understand. And again, guys, this has to be. You have to be in compliance by December 9th, 2022. It's not an opt-in. It's a federal requirement.
But who's putting teeth into this? Is this the FTC?
The Federal Trade Commission, yeah.
So they're the ones who would determine compliance or not.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And are they doing investigations and spot assessments and such?
I would have to strongly say that they are. Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious why we're not hearing more about this, or they're not.
Well, you are. I mean, you look at NADA.org for the automobile industry. I mean, it's all over the place, and they have a listing on their website of what businesses are required to that fall under these guidelines. And for the clients that we deal with, it's 100% the auto industry. And these amended elements are kind of what we do for other clients in some capacity. But again, it just, we're having meetings with clients and prospects to go over. This isn't something that you can do and say, "Can you get this done for me tomorrow?" Like, no, there's,
All right. So what is it that break it down for me, Brian? Like, what do we got to start doing? What are the things?
So they added, I think, 9 elements to the security program. So a lot of companies don't have a security program, number one, even though it was part of the original Safeguards Rule. So a couple of different things have to happen. One of the things is you have to designate what they call a qualified individual that's going to implement and supervise this entire security program.
All right, so like a security officer or somebody.
Yeah, and
who's in charge.
it can be an employee. It doesn't have to be. It can be an affiliate.
But they're the
or
ones who
service
take
provider.
on the initiative in the company,
Correct.
basically.
Correct. And
Kind of like in HIPAA, they're the I forget what we call those folks.
Security officer.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
and then but that person's role is needs to oversee everything else that falls below it. And we can kind of touch on that now. Like, so one of the things you have to do that you're required to do is you have to conduct a risk assessment. Okay. And so that risk assessment, I mean, we do that all the time for clients. We do that twice a year for our existing clients. We do that for prospects. So the risk assessment, it can be done by your IT company. It can be done in-house. You can hire a third party to do it. It doesn't matter. But after that risk assessment is done, that's where you determine, foreseeable risks, threats, internal, external, to the security, confidentiality, and integrity of the customer information. So you got to realize these dealerships are
That's
pulling
CIA. What are you talking about?
they're pulling, personal information from their consumers, their customers, right? You want to run a credit check.
Well, yeah, for legal or for financial purposes, right? For loans and stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
this is a little bigger than PCI compliance, but it's not.
It's kind of same vein, but I'm trying to understand. So, all right, so we got to have a written information security policy. It's got to be writing.
Oh yeah, that's where this all,
that's what we're doing from this assessment.
Exactly. I mean, the policy has to be, you call it your WISP, you call it whatever you want, but you have to have that written information security policy. And then you have to, part of it is also reviewing, amending, changing, and testing that policy. So your risk assessment is done. You identify these risks, threats, and then so the rule requires you to conduct periodic assessments. So as you document these changes, you still need to conduct these assessments.
Okay.
Then you have to design and implement safeguards to control the risks that were just identified through this assessment. So through your information security program, now here's a list of things that fall under these safeguards that are subsequent to your
lay them on me, brother.
So you have to implement and periodically review access controls. So they have to determine who has access to what customer information, and reconsider on a regular basis whether they still have a legitimate business need for it. So that could be someone in accounting that has access to this sensitive information. Now, what controls are in place to make sure that hasn't changed, doesn't change? Do they need access to it? Is it a group? How are these permissions set up? Is it role based? Is it based on, is it time out after 6 months? Now, that's controls. That's
getting into the nitty gritty there, Brian. I think what you're saying there is that has to follow their policy, right?
Well, it does, yeah.
I mean, that's basically the concept. Is they're going to come up with a business policy and they're going to say, look, here's the controls that we're using for these things, and now we got to follow it, and here's how we're proving we're following it.
That's how you're controlling the risk. Is yes.
Yeah.
You're
you're talking right now. I'm going to equate it. I'm trying to ask you questions for specific reasons, Brian, because I think this ties back to a lot of different stuff that we talk about on a regular basis, and I'm interested in this. I don't know everything I need to know, so you're helping me. Okay, so please understand that I'm not trying to take over, but that's identity management, right? We're tying this back to zero trust and into, which is becoming, as an industry standard, the SASE zero trust model is becoming the go-to, right? So when we talk about the layers of defense, identity management, or that system access control, is the first thing. How long do they have access? Is it only on demand? Is it all the time? All those things matter, right? How do we prove they're who they are? Do we know they're who they are? Or are they on a device they say they're on? Is it authorized? All that stuff.
Right.
All right. Then what else?
You need to know what you have and where you have it. So they say that this is just
That's your information, your assets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Conduct a periodic inventory of data, noting where it's collected, stored, transmitted. You have to have an accurate list of all the systems, devices, platforms, and personnel, staff. I mean, it's not just
It's everything.
Yes, it's everything.
Yep.
And then you have to design those safeguards to respond with resilience.
Okay. And so when they're doing that risk assessment, I'm assuming what we're talking about there is we're kind of taking a look at those three things, like, how likely is things to happen? What is it that we're looking at? And what are we talking about, right? And then what happens if it gets breached or risked? And then what's the likelihood of that? What's the impact?
Yeah, yeah,
And so
exactly.
you start with that assessment, but then you may have to come back and write your thing and then go right back and do another assessment. Is what I'm hearing.
That's
Okay.
exactly what you need to do.
Okay, cool.
Another thing is, which we talk about a lot too, is encrypting customer information on your system and when it's in transit. So there is a caveat here that if it's not feasible to use encryption, you have to secure it by using an effective alternative controls approved method. So let's say that your sensitive information is, it's encrypted in transit, but maybe not be encrypted at rest. And I'm just,
Sure.
not just giving an example here. Maybe
because of such and such reason.
Exactly. And maybe that the only people that have access to this data, they're required to do, multi-factor authentication before they look at this data, and then whatever. So, but
we're putting DLP policies, and it's
whatever you want to do is
tagged with information rights management. And if they don't have this level of access, they can't touch it anyway.
But and that's so if you don't use encryption but you don't have it documented that this is what you're doing instead, then you're not in compliance. You have to have that documented.
It seems to me, documentation and proving, right? The ability to validate everything is the common 100%. Theme I'm hearing you bring back. And that's common, again, through all these compliance things. And that's the one place where most businesses fail, because they put it all in play, but then they don't go back to see if it's working.
Well, you're right. You have that on the calendar to, quarterly to do this. You're going to do it. And there's always something that's going to change that you have to amend and rewrite.
That's right.
But without
I just had that conversation with my team today. We talked about Microsoft 365 hardening and how every quarter we got to go back and look again.
Yep. Same thing.
Right?
Same thing.
Yeah, you really have to audit the stuff we're doing too. We have to audit it just so we know, because people are gonna make mistakes.
Hey, this isn't just about, guys, we know this, right? But we're talking to the public now. We're trying to educate. And it's not just about the stuff that's in the dealership, right? It's about their vendors. It's about their supply stream, right? Those people have to be vetted now.
Well, that's on here too.
You haven't gotten to that part yet, I'm sure. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. I'm just kind of running through this list. And then
you're cool, man. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to squirrel you. I'm
not at all. They tell you need to assess your app. So if your company or dealership does any internal development of its own applications,
big time.
And they're storing or accessing and transmitting customer information, that has to be audited regularly and documented. Implement multi-factor authentication for anyone using customer information on your system. So I know right now that a lot of dealerships do not do this. So they have to, multi-factor authentication is something that we all know what it is. It's that, whether you're banking, you get a ping on your phone, or you're going checking email somewhere, you get a notification you have to approve. They want that second factor of authentication. Other than your password, they need to know that it's you accessing this data, which is recorded and logged also. So we can see, if we have to go back a year and see who accessed certain data on a certain day, we can go back and go through those logs. And
hey, you know what that is, Brian? That's SIM.
Right. Well, that's yeah.
It's my favorite word. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're good. You have to have a written policy on the disposal of customer information securely. So you have to securely dispose of customer information no later than 2 years after your most recent use of it to serve the customer. And the only exceptions to this are if you have a legitimate business need or a legal requirement to hold on to it,
Wow, so
or
that's
from-
wow. That's actually kind of different, right? Like, in my experience, it's been, related maybe to like medical providers or lawyers where they're needing to retain that stuff long periods of time, right?
Mhm.
Whereas these guys are like, look, man, you can have it for a little bit, then get rid of it.
Right. It's yeah. Yep.
Okay.
All
That's
right.
interesting.
Now this is kind of what we've been talking about in a roundabout way too. Is anticipate and evaluate changes to your information system or network. So changes to
Every
your
time a new software package comes into play,
Exactly.
every time a new vendor comes into play, every time
the
any
company adds a new server, has that created a new security
That's
risk?
right.
So that's
They
the
actually
same rule.
mention in the rule too that if you're creating your own applications, so which I don't know of many car dealerships that actually do that.
I don't either. Right.
That's going to be huge if you have to create your own applications and
Mhm.
manage them.
I mean, that's I mean, again, those things, every one of these things are completely in line with all kinds of the different compliance pillars that we've been, banging on for years. I'm not feeling still that any of this is really out of the norm of compliance regulation. You know what
No.
I'm saying? Like,
No.
it's out of the norm for a lot of businesses to have this stuff already, but the need and they're not asking for anything crazy. I think it's all good stuff. Keep going. I'm sorry.
We'll get to some of the
I know. I'm sure that there's pain involved. Yes.
Along with what you mentioned earlier with the SIM, you need to be able to maintain. I think this is where a SIM will come in handy. Maintain a log of authorized users' activity and keep an eye out for unauthorized access. You can shoehorn DLP into their access rights management, but being able just being able to audit users' activity and maybe there's somebody that left and they weren't properly disabled and you can you get a login from them after they're gone. So you have to be able to audit and pull that data.
Yep.
So that all falls under. That's all part of the heading of designing and implementing safeguards that are controlling the risk assessments that we identified. That's one subsection there. Now they're getting into the other elements, right?
Oh man.
Yeah.
How many more elements? Wow.
There's about a half dozen more. So now,
all right, cool.
Now this is kind of, again, it all kind of falls into play with what we've been talking about. But now this one is a little, going to hit some dealers harder than others. Regularly monitor and test the effectiveness of your safeguards. So you have to test your procedures and detect actual and attempted attacks. And it can be accomplished through continuous monitoring of your system. And if you don't implement that, you must conduct annual penetration testing, as well as the vulnerability assessments, including system-wide scans every 6 months. Okay, so if you're not testing your procedures regularly and documenting those tests, then you must conduct annual penetration testing. And on top of that, like I said, the 6 months, every 6 months vulnerability assessments and documented for all the, against all the known vulnerabilities. And in addition, you have to test whenever there are material changes to your operations or business arrangements, and whenever there are circumstances you know of or have reason to know that they have a material impact on your information security program. So if something changes internally, you have to go ahead and retest everything and make sure that everything is still, all the vulnerabilities have been checked out, especially the publicly known security vulnerabilities. That all has to be checked. So this one is as it's just monitoring. It's a big one, because if you're not doing this and documenting that it's being tested regularly through continuous monitoring, and the only way to do that, honestly, is with a SIM SOC.
I'm here to tell you the good news is that all three gentlemen sitting in this screen right now can get that taken care of for any one of these businesses, and in no time at all.
Yeah.
And that's not a pitch. I'm just telling. No, I mean, it takes time, but I'm saying the solution is in play. Right. We can already give these folks all of those things nice and tight.
Right. And just to put numbers out there,
it's going to be tight to try and get it by December.
That's why I'm asking who's putting teeth and what are they like? Because I mean, listen, we've heard the CMMC, we've heard the DFARS, and the folks in the DoD have supposed to been attesting and having written security plans for the last 5 years. They've all attested to having certain scores, and none of them have, and blah 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 blah. Like, nobody's getting fined, nobody's going to jail, nobody doing anything. So I'm trying to find out, like, that was my first question. Who's enforcing this? Where is it coming
But
from?
once you get breached, that's the
Well,
problem.
it's always a problem then, right?
And your
Because then we can look
cyber-
back and say you're a dumbass. You didn't listen. Excuse my language, but
Now,
like,
there's. I mean, I can tell you with 100% confidence that there's, dealerships out there that have their staff using their Gmail. They're collecting
yeah,
information.
all
That has
over
to
the
stop,
place.
right? So you're talking about monumental changes that are going to affect people, staff. I mean, and again, average dealership that we work with is probably 75 people. So to go in there and implement these changes that you have to do is they're going to have to relearn how to do their jobs.
I mean, it's going to cause a lot of disruption in their daily process if they go and implement this properly across the board.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question about that. But that's true, I think, of any business who moves into that direction, right? There's a disruption in that play.
Yeah.
The thing I think it's important to convey to the folks out there today, though, is like, look, the concept of ignorance is bliss and stuff is no longer, like, you can't claim didn't hear about it, didn't know about it.
Oh, no. Yeah.
That doesn't matter anymore. And like, when you're told about this, not me and you, but the folks out there, and then you don't do something, that's called willful negligence. And that's against the law.
Yeah. So the nice thing here is we're working
you're
with.
You're better off keeping your head in the sand.
We're dealing with
but that doesn't excuse you. It just means you didn't necessarily
we're dealing
know.
with the owners, of the dealership. So they're all in.
Yeah. No, again, I'm not saying that in a threatening way. I'm trying to say that because there's going to be folks out there who hear these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be like, we got it covered. Our team's doing fine. We're okay. We haven't had any issues. We don't, I don't know, but there's going to be bounce back, right? There's always somebody. And I'm just trying to say, listen, just saying those words is not enough anymore, because you're impacting. The problem is it's one thing if you want to mess around with your own business, right, and your own livelihood. But when you start affecting the livelihood of the people who are buying products from you and giving you their information and their finances and all that kind of stuff, that's when people like the FTC are not going to take kindly to that too terribly much, and you're going to have a problem on your plate.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is this is probably pushed on by the insurance companies, because if you're not following this, then they don't have to pay out.
Look, on some level, I dabble with this in my head every day, and guys, I'm trying to stay on topic with this, but
because we got to get through this list.
Something has to change in that. In somehow, this is like kind of like COVID on some level. Like, it's the new norm. Like the hacking, you got to get to the point where you got to know you're going to need to do these things. At some point, you're going to get either breached or compromised, and it's going to either destroy your personal life, your professional life, or both. Maybe it isn't going to destroy anything, but just cause a whole bunch of disruption and inconvenience. But it's not going away. You're not going to wait this out. Technology is becoming more and more and more enveloped in every aspect of the world. And we are so tied to that information highway. Like,
let's get through
I
this.
just want to beg everybody out there, like, get with it, guys. This isn't that terribly hard. It's not out of the question. Okay, yes, it's an expense you're not used to, but we can find ways to cover that cost through efficiencies using your technology while you're being safe, and help you to improve on that so that that cost is absorbed and not even noticed.
Yep. All right, let's keep going here.
Yep.
Training, staff training, something that we've talked about for years. Security awareness training, and it's got to be done regularly, monitored, audited. And again, we do this for all clients, and this is now something that they're saying that you need to do. So we've had dealerships tell us, you know what, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't. Now you need it. So now everyone has to go through this training process. You have to monitor your service providers. So so this is kind of what you were saying earlier, David. Your contracts must spell out your security expectations and build in ways to monitor your service provider's work and provide for periodic reassessments of their suitability for the job. So again, this is ongoing, and your service providers can be, that's not up to us. It's up for the qualified individual to have that identified in their security policy, who the service provider is, and then go on and go ahead and just make sure that they're meeting the standards that you set them to. So that has to be done as well. Keep information security program current. And again, there's emerging threats all the time. Changes in personnel. There could be changes for other reasons, but you have to. The only constant with that is change, right? So you have to keep that documented as well and keep it current. And then one of the big ones, well, the last two here, and this is a big one. If you don't have it already, is you have to have you have to create a written incident response plan. So again, that alone is something that's going to take time to do. That could take weeks to do.
And you can't do it without knowing what it is you're protecting. Right. Like you can't do it without starting with the assessment, right? Like all the things you just talked about, don't go straight to the incident response plan. That's not going to help you.
Exactly. Well, that's it. I mean, so and again, really a brief overlay is the incident response plan is the plan that you put in place that is tested quarterly. I would say semi-annually at biannually at the least. Incident response plan and you go through tabletop exercises on breaches, incidents, and it doesn't have to be a cyber. It could be a disaster, catastrophe. It could be. You have to have a plan for each one of these.
That's right. It's a good idea to do incident response plans for different things, like it's a ransomware event, it's a tornado, it's a whatever, and test out several of those things, right? Because certain systems won't come into play under certain circumstances, and then other times they will, right? Like if it's a ransomware attack, it might not be the same as if a server, gets flooded in a server room and, something to that effect, right?
We did that.
I'm just saying.
Yesterday, it was over 100 degrees in there.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
So
the cloud.
The incident response plan has to, under these safeguards rule, it has to have your internal processes of your company, the process for the incident, roles, responsibilities, and levels of decision-making authority. Again, this is standard in incident response plan, but these bullets have to be in there. Communication, information sharing, both inside and outside the company. When do you involve, legal, cyber experts, the police, whatever.
Well, who are they? I mean, that's the first question is like, what number? Who's the person's name? Oh, that was stored on my computer. Well, guess what? Your computer is gone. But I did read, and I want to clarify, if the entities involved are collecting information on 5,000 or fewer customers, they're exempt from incident response planning and written risk assessments, as well as annual reporting to the board of directors. Is that true?
I have not read that.
That's what I was mentioning earlier.
I'm pulling this right from the FTC Gov site. This is all
okay. That's fine. I'm going to do some investigation.
That could be from that could have been from the original Safeguards Rule when it was first implemented.
No, this says under the updated, Safeguards Rule, the entities collecting information. I mean, I'm reading it right from a report.
That doesn't sound right? As you're saying it, I don't. Right? It seems a little.
That's basically saying if you have, and I don't know how do we determine what's the time frame of that 5,000 or fewer customers? Is that in a year, or is that forever, or in the 2-year time frame? Like, so that part of it's not laid out in this particular mentioning of it. And so I'm just asking that question because I need to know, and so do you and everybody else out there. So.
And then the last one I think is going to, be challenging for some is require your qualified individual to report to your board of directors.
Right.
So this individual must report in writing regularly, at least annually, to the board of directors or governing body. If your company doesn't have a board or equivalent, the report must go to a senior officer responsible for your information security program. And it has to address an overall assessment of the company's compliance within its information security program. In addition, it has to cover specific topics related to the program, risk assessment, risk management, control decisions, service provider arrangements, test results, security events, and how management responded, and recommendations for changes in the information security program. So that has to happen at least annually, written up and submitted to a board or whoever the governing body is. So,
all right, cool. Hey, shameless plug.
Yeah.
WinStar Technologies has a new service offering, Virtual CSO, and we do just that. We do the risk assessments, we do the policies and procedures, we do the quarterly board meetings, we communicate in writing, and we show up at the meetings to discuss those things with the board. We work through all of those we work with your internal tech team or your other provider to get the validation that the things that your controls are. We work with the stakeholders in each department and each asset to determine what the risks are and what the effect and impact to the company is, because those are the people who know, not the executives, right?
Yep.
Like when this goes away, what happens? Well, don't ask the top guys, ask those people, because they're the ones who affect. So that's something that we have found a great need for these larger clients of ours, and we've had some really good success with it.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if it's the FTC or if it's NADA.org, that has like kind of like a starter template to help people get through this process, because
Sure.
it's overwhelming. If you are just seeing this for the first time, you need to move now, act now, and seriously get things in place, on board, engage with somebody, hire a consultant, whatever it is. But there's to meet this deadline and be in compliance, it's got to be already happening, in my opinion.
It's amazing to me that's this year, December 9th, and very few people even know about it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. David, you're working with some dealerships, right? I mean, it's a lot on your plate, right?
Well, we have one dealership that we've been working with for a long time, but it's so similar to the HIPAA and the CMMC.
Yep.
That I don't feel like and PCI. I don't feel like it's all that difficult.
For us, no, but for those companies who haven't been doing those things, that is going to be a culture change, right?
That's what I meant. I don't feel like it's a whole.
We can help them get there pretty quick.
Realm.
Yeah.
All this compliance, as you mentioned earlier, is very similar. They just have different regulations for specific things.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Very good.
We went a little over today, but I think we had to
I think it was worth it.
What we had to, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, my gosh, we could have gone on and on and on. I do want to find out about that 5,000 or fewer stuff, though.
Yeah.
Just because it'd be good to know.
Yep. Absolutely.
Very good.
All right, guys. Well, thank you.
You guys have a good day.
Thank you. Talk to you next
Everybody
week.
be